But first, the Republican Party appears to have settled on an idea, on a policy for coping with the economic crisis. Sure, President Obama has his highfalutin stimulus package and budget proposal, but now Republicans in Congress have found something that they want to say to that, besides just no. They seem to have come to consensus today that they will continue to say no to the president's economic plans, but they will also propose taking action in the opposite direction. Here's the top Republican in the House, Minority Leader John Boehner.
I think we can help our economy, and we can send a strong signal to the American people.
By extending what did you say? Can we play that one more time? That's what the Republicans are calling for? The brand name policy of economic fundamental misunderstanding endorsed by more conservatives than any other proven policy failure on the market today. Spending freeze. Really? John Boehner was just one in a parade of Republicans to sing the praises of the spending freeze on the floor of the House today. Here was Congressman John Culberson of Texas with his spending freeze sales pitch.
We fiscal conservatives are offering remainder of the fiscal year with a
freeze spending. Of course, we also can't leave out the stirring spending freeze speech of Indiana's Mike Pence.
For the rest of this year, let's...
Congressman Pence, the frontrunner in the spending freeze spokesmodel talent search. After that rousing call for this inexplicable economic policy this morning on Capitol Hill, Mr. Pence took time out to push the spending freeze again this afternoon on the TV machine.
Republicans today voted overwhelmingly.
How dare you say such a thing to me? How dare you say such a thing to me? How dare you say such a thing to me?
Now, back in September, the GOP's very own first runner-up to the presidency, John McCain, advocated a spending freeze. Also, when it totally didn't make sense, he proposed a spending freeze again on Tuesday of this week. You know, Senator McCain lost the debate over what to do about the economy during the campaign. He then spectacularly lost the election. Had he won either, we might at this moment be facing the real threat of a spending freeze during a historic economic downturn. And we do actually have empirical evidence about how that plays out.
Leave me alone. Leave me alone. Leave me alone.
You know who else had the excellent idea to freeze government spending during a recession? This guy, HH, President Herbert Hoover. His fundamental misunderstanding of how to shore up a failing economy was so celebrated that the great armies of homeless and jobless Americans gave him naming rights for the shantytowns where they all lived in cardboard boxes and burnt-out cars during the Great Depression. Hoovervilles. Hoovervilles. And now?
It's your world that is happening. It's your world that is happening. It's your world that is happening. It's your world that is happening.
John Boehner and congressional Republicans are advocating the same policy. If Boehner gets his way with the spending freeze, I wonder if the 21st century shantytowns will be called Boehnervilles, which of course could get very ugly if folks take to using the phonetic pronunciation of his name.
I can't stand the sight of you. I can't stand the sight of you.
The unemployment rate in this country shot up to 8.1% after 651,000 Americans lost their jobs last month. When you add in the underemployed, the people who have taken part-time jobs but need full-time jobs, and the people who've stopped looking for work, who've just given up, you get the perhaps more accurate and definitely more scary real unemployment rate. How does 14.8% stand? Wow. You know about supply and demand, right? Supply is stuff that is for sale. Demand is... In this context, the Republicans are proposing a spending freeze. They're saying the government should stop spending. Also, rather than put your house fire out with water, they're going to switch the liquid in the fire hose over to gasoline. Does that seem like a good idea? Joining us now is Ana Marie Cox, national correspondent for Air America and Daily Beast contributor. Ana Marie, thanks so much for coming on the show.
It's good to be here.
Spending freeze is a great, short, sweet slogan. Fits on a button, fits on a bumper sticker. It sounds like it's very responsible, belt tightening, telling those crooks in Washington how you feel. It is completely ridiculous as economic policy. Do they know that?
Well, I was actually thinking about this and how it's a little bit like, with economics, much as with, environmental science, you can get experts or so-called experts to say almost anything you want. But in this case, it says, and so Republicans are weird about global warming, right? They say they have experts that disprove global warming. I think this is like we've already been through global warming. It's almost, they're arguing about this deficit as though the science had not already happened. Like we've already had the planet, catch on fire once before under Herbert Hoover. Maybe that metaphor is a little bit too elaborate, but I was really in love with it when I came up with it a second ago.
I love this metaphor. I think it's perfect. Keep going. More about Hoover.
You drive me crazy. You drive me crazy.
Sorry.
You know what I'm talking about. It's they refuse to look at existing science. They refuse to look at history and see what's happened, and instead they've chosen to go with something that sounds very pretty.
Yeah, and it's a political capital decision, not a policy decision. And there is this GOP talking point. I heard it from Tim Pawlenty the other day on this show. This idea, we don't need new ideas, we just need to better articulate our old ideas. But is there anybody who is doing well politically in the Republican Party who actually thinks they do need new ideas?
Well, what's funny is I actually think T-Paw, as I hope you call him as well, is one of the people who's coming up with new ideas. I mean, I've interviewed him before as well, and he says that they don't need new ideas. But back in Minnesota, he's actually doing relatively innovative stuff with the very liberal Minnesota legislature. So he's maybe a bad example. I think as far as Republican leaders who are actually coming up with new ideas, there's none. I just can't think of a single one.
You covered John McCain during the presidential campaign. He was out proposing a spending freeze during the campaign. He's proposing it again now. I mean, does he remember how badly that went over during the campaign? I mean, there ought to be common wisdom lessons learned for the Republicans about that campaign and about how badly they got beat specifically on the economy. But I don't sense that they have learned those lessons.
I thought you were going to say, doesn't he remember Hoovervilles personally?
Oh.
But
Don't make fun of me. Don't make fun of me.
I won't go there. Sorry. I think that John McCain made some political compromises during the campaign, but I will give him this. He does certainly believe that spending freeze is a good idea. He's wrong, but he believes it. I don't know if you get any more credit for actually believing something that's wrong, but that's what I think is the case with John McCain.
It's sort of endearing if you're a cartoon character, but you probably shouldn't be given anything to run.
Yeah.
Well, it's this courage of my completely wrong convictions. It's like neat. That makes you a very interesting character in fiction. But John McCain, John Boehner, Eric Cantor, Mike Pence, these guys have been regarded as relatively serious Republicans. I mean, these guys are not Jim Bunning or Michael Steele. But now they are advocating these economic policies that really don't make sense, which makes me feel like, okay, maybe these guys aren't serious. At least they're not serious about policy. Are there secretly other Republicans who we will be taking seriously 6 months from now?
Oh, yes. Yes, definitely. Because you know what? We're not going to be talking about economics necessarily 6 months from now. There are plenty of middle-of-the-road Republicans and Democrats from so-called purple districts that on areas like education, healthcare, and the environment are going to be coming together to try and figure out something. Because the White House is, I think, pretty serious about at least trying for bipartisanship deals. Sure, they'll push something through if they don't have the Republican votes. But I think they're serious about listening to Republicans. And also, I want to point out that just because you're a showboater or just because you aren't serious about policy doesn't mean you're a serious contender for leadership in the Republican Party. I think history has shown us that.
Who are you referring to with the showboating? Ana Marie? Am I going to ruin your Twitter feed now? Because all the Republican chairman candidates aren't going to friend you on Facebook and direct message you anymore? This is all happening in public.
Maybe.
Is it true?
Well, let's just say that the current leadership of the House Republicans are more interested about looking good than they are about creating sound fiscal policy, I think.
I'm sure.
But also in the history of the Republican Party, and the history of the Republican Party has shown other people do the same thing, and Democrats too.
Sure. I mean, when you're out of party, you have the leisure of not having to actually run anything, and so you try to, I think, look better than you sound sometimes. Ana Marie Cox, national correspondent for Air America, contributor to the Daily Beast, and all-around good sport. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Rachel.
Hasta la vista.